aka the Furniture Man, was a known body snatcher and serial killer in the late 1940s to 1950s. He was also known to the residents of his area as the Butcher of Plainsfield or the Plainsfield Ghoul. Many people nowadays know him for his unique eye for fashion and interior design. How did someone so seemingly innocent turn out to be a convicted murderer? Ed Gein was born on the evening of August 22, 1906, in a small county in Wisconsin called La Crosse. He was the second of two boys to the parents George Philip Gein and Augustus Willamette Gein. His older brother's name was Henry George Gein. Ed Gein's parents had a strained marital relationship. His father, George Philip Gein, was a notorious alcoholic known for not being able to keep a job. Throughout the years, he worked as a carpenter, tanner, and an insurance salesman before he decided to own his own grocery store for about a year, which he then decided to sell in order to buy the 155-acre isolated plantation in Plainsfield, Wisconsin. This forced geographical isolation of the family allowed Augustus, Ed Gein's mother, to force her radical religious beliefs onto the family. Augustus rarely ever allowed outsiders in, or her children to leave, only making an exception for school. She even reserved a special time every afternoon to read to them from the Bible, usually selecting verses from the Old Testament concerning death, murder, and divine retribution. Her goal of these sermons were to educate her children on the innate immorality of the world, the evil of drinking, and how all women are naturally promiscuous and evil, making only an exception for herself. Due to this forced, severed social detachment, Ed tended to be shy and awkward around others, especially in school. Many of his classmates and teachers remembered him as having very strange mannerisms, such as seemingly random laughter, as if he was laughing at his own personal jokes.
Yeah, he was a pretty normal kid. He seemed smart, at least. It was just he was a little odd sometimes, He had this way of, laughing out at random times, and just, in general, kind of made the other kids uncomfortable. But, overall, he seemed like a pretty good kid. Can't imagine he would have done anything.
On April 1st, 1940, Ed Gein's father died due to heart failure caused by alcoholism. Work and income then fell to the two brothers, as they worked odd jobs to cover expenses. The brothers were generally considered reliable and honest by residents of the community. In the beginning, both of them worked as handymen, but on the side, Ed preferred to babysit for neighbors as he had an easier time relating to younger children. Ed's brother Henry had other ideas. He soon began dating a divorced single mother of two and planned on moving in with her. Shortly after this, he began to worry about Ed's attachment to their mother and began speaking ill of her whenever Ed was around. Ed only replied with shock and hurt by Henry's abrasive outbursts. On May 16, 1944, Henry and Ed were burning away marsh vegetation on their property when the fire got out of control. Firefighters were soon drawn to the scene, and the fire was put out by the end of the day. Ed soon reported Henry missing, and a search party was put together in order to find his body. It was soon found lying face down on the property, and they deemed that he had died of heart failure or asphyxiation due to no burns or outside injury being reported on the body. Despite the fact that the police dismissed foul play and the coroner ruled asphyxiation, it was later reported in Harold Church's Biology of Gein. Deviant, that Henry had bruises and several lacerations on his head. This, accompanied with the fact that no investigation or official autopsy was performed, could mean that Ed did kill his brother. Augustus, Ed's mother, was paralyzed soon after due to a stroke. She soon died on December 29, 1945, at the age of 67. On the morning of November 16, 1957, Plainfield hardware store owner Beatrice Warden disappeared. Plainfield residents reported that the hardware store's truck had been driven out from the rear of the building at around 9:30 a.m. They chalked up this disappearance to the deer hunting season that had just started. Bernice Warden's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, entered the store around 5 p.m. to find the store's cash register open and bloodstains covering the floor. Ed had been seen at the hardware store the day before Bernice Warden had went missing. Ed had told Frank Warden, Bernice's son, that he would stop by the next day for a gallon of antifreeze. Investigators believe that he had stopped by the next morning to purchase the antifreeze when he was playing around with one of the rifles on the racks. It had misfired, and it had only fired once. Killing Bernice Warden on impact. A startling series of events, Gein was then arrested later that same day. The police then decided to search Gein's house. These are their findings. following images and descriptions may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Once the police were on the property, they found Warden's decapitated body in a shed. She had been hung upside down by her legs with ropes at her wrists. Her torso was gutted out like a deer, and she had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle. After further investigations, they figured out that the mutilations were made after her death. While in Gein's house, they had found a belt made of human nipples, 2 legs seemingly sewn together in a box, Mary Hogan, a missing girl's head, in a box, a lampshade made completely out of human skin and faces, chairs made completely out of human skin and faces, necklaces made of nothing but human tongues. They also found many other disturbing things, such as Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, and her heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove. Gein was arrested shortly after the sheriff's department found all these items. He was then held for questioning at the Worcestershire County Sheriff's Office. While being questioned, Gein admitted to having as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 of the local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies, while he was in a dazed-like state between the times of 1947 and 1952. Gein recounted coming out of this dazed-like state and stumbling home confused and empty-handed on around 30 of these occasions. Gein said that his reason for uncovering the bodies that he did was that he would dig up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women that slightly resembled his mother in order to make outfits and furniture that reminded him of her. Gein told investigators that he had robbed the graves shortly after the funeral, so that way the graves were not fully complete and they were easy to access. Upon further investigation, 2 graves were found completely empty. One had a crowbar in place of a body. 1 casket was empty. 1 casket Gein had failed to open and had lost his pry bar in the grave. With the third, most of the body had been gone. Yet, Gein had decided to return some rings and body parts to each grave, thus corroborating Gein's confession. After Gein's mother's death, he began to create a woman suit so that he could become his mother to literally crawl into her skin. Gein also denied having sex with any of the bodies he exhumed, explaining that they smelt just too bad. Gein also admitted to the shooting death of Mary Hogan, a tavern owner missing since 1954, whose head was found in his house, but later denied any memory of the details of her death.
Hey, weren't we supposed to do the Ouija board thing today?
What's today?
I thought we said we were gonna do Thursday.
When's Thursday?
Today.
Today?
Yeah.
Yo, intern! You got the Ouija board stuff? This is the Ouija board stuff? Yeah, it's all the budget has. Busted into my grave. That wasn't great. And then, next thing I knew, he was gone. And he had taken my... I don't like it. Skin. She was supposed to say skin. On November 21st, 1957, Gein was arraigned in the Worcestershire County Court, where he pled not guilty by reason of insanity to 1 count of first-degree murder. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent and thus unfit for trial. In 1968, Gein was determined mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense. The official trial began on November 7th, 1968. And lasted only 1 week. Gein's trial was held without a jury. He was found guilty on November 14th by Judge Robert H. Golomer. After testimony held by expert psychologists, Golomer ruled Gein not guilty by reason of insanity and had him committed to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Gein happened to spend the rest of his life in this hospital. Gein died at the Mendota Mental Health Institute due to respiratory failure on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. As for Gein's home and the 195-acre property, they were appraised and sold. His possessions were scheduled to be auctioned on March 30th, 1958, but on March 20th, the house caught fire, supposedly by a rubbish fire that had been set 75 feet away from the house by a cleaning crew. When Gein heard of the tragic destruction of his paraphernalia, he just shrugged and said, "Just as well."
The furniture man.